Okay, well, I almost considered not doing this third video because this thing's really dragging on a lot more than I wanted to for a basic sharpening video. But I really couldn't, in good faith, not cover the last part, and that's just basically just the finishing touches you do on a blade. Um, as you recall, when we started out, I used this just to make sure that you're on the right video, and if you haven't, you can go back and search Sharpening for Dummies 101. You find a red background with a knife on it like this is in the video, and you'll see, and that'll be the other ones. I've got two videos before this that I've done about 15 minutes each. We started with just a diamond stone. This is a really inexpensive stone, probably cost you $10, $15. Has a 400 on one side, a 600 on the other, and the knife that I was using was this Buck USA hunting knife of my son's. I wanted to get a knife that wasn't just a sharp knife that I have. The problem you have is when you learn how to sharpen a knife, then all of a sudden every knife in your house is sharp because it's actually quite a bit of fun to put a edge on a blade that can be kind of scary. They get so sharp. So I found this knife from my son. It was in really bad shape. So we started out on the 400 grit stone, worked it a bit, went to the 600 grit. After that, I pulled out an Arkansas hard. This is usually considered to be about an 800 grit, from what I can find. If you have an Arkansas soft, don't buy a hard. My opinion is they'll do exactly the same thing. There's just not a lot of difference between it. And then at the very end of the last video, I pulled out this old Arkansas black that I have that has just been in my family. I've had this for 40 years probably. And did some touching up on that. Just to recap, the big thing in the first two videos that we talked about was controlling your layover. A lot of people call that a burr. I believe we're really talking about the same thing, but I like the word layover better just because it is more descriptive about what's going on. And when we talk about layover, my little simple drawing, when you work on a knife, and if this is the tip of your blade in the area that you're sharpening, as you grind with your stone, as you push that knife across there, you're basically going to lay that blade tip over just a little bit against the direction of where you're going. So if this is my stone here, and the knife's working on this edge, is going to make that edge just kind of roll slightly. And so then I'll turn the knife over and start working this edge over here, and then pretty soon what it's going to happen, it's going to lay that the other way. A lot of people would call that a burr. So we talked about all that in the other two videos, and so this particular one here, I just want to talk about really finishing up the knife. The last time we were here, we had the Arkansas Blackstone, and we were working that thing, and I said I was going to work on the knife blade just a little bit more when I finished, but I decided not to because actually it was really close to being done. And so remember the basics. And the basics are, there's really not a right way to push, pull, drag, figure eight. There's people that'll, get these different kind of motions done. It's just really whatever you're comfortable with. I've practiced before dragging blades away from the grain, and I think that needs a little bit more practice, but it can be done effectively if you work at it. I like to start at the heel of the blade and work toward the tip, and cutting, one side and then the other. And the point I made about controlling that rollover is you don't want to take 4 strokes this way, 4 strokes this way, 4 stroke. Every stroke should be alternating, and that alternating will keep that layover from getting to be a big problem, even though you may actually have it. Now, in the last part of the other video, we talked about using feel and sound. So when you get on the finer stones, it's going to become really evident when you're working on the stone that that one side might be dragging just a little bit more than the other. You might feel just a little more resistance going one way or the other. And if you do go like that and you say, boy, that feels like it's catching more than this way. Well, what you probably got is just a little bit of a layover going this way. And so when you're sharpening there, you're going right up against that that sharp part that's been laid over on there. So if you do find something like that, well, then just maybe hit it twice, maybe 3 times. This black stone is actually very, it doesn't take off much material because it's so smooth. And in the process of doing this, we're polishing that blade and taking those serrations off that came from the coarser stones. You don't necessarily have to have a black stone to get a nice, scary sharp. You can do it on an Arkansas hard, which is about an 800 grit. And the thing there is when you're talking about it, you want to use feel, you want to do touch. And I think you might have remembered from before my little saying, grit plus pressure, or grit times pressure equals to finish. If you want to take a lot of material off on this really hard stone, you push really hard, and it's going to do that more, but you're going to score the blade a little bit more. If you want to really fine tune it, then really work lightly. So I can take this and I can really put a lot of pressure on it to really accomplish something more aggressive. Or as I'm finishing up the knife, what I'm going to do is I'm really going to take off. I'm going to back off of this thing a lot and just kind of just slightly drag the knife over there to work that layover to a finer and finer point. But anyway you look at it, when you finally do get done, that blade probably still has a slight bit of layover, although it's not going to be really super evident. Okay, now another way that you can test for layover is feel the blade. See, and if you have one side, like if I did this and I said, boy, that's really sharp, but then I go here and it says, oh, it doesn't feel as sharp as the other side, that probably indicates that the blade is laying over just a little bit. Okay, so if this blade was laying over this way and I feel this, I've got that really sharp burr that I'm feeling up against, and it's going to feel sharp. If I come over on this side and do the same thing, well, that laid over part is what I'm rubbing my thumb up against, and it's going to feel not quite so dull. So if you do that and you say, well, this side doesn't feel quite as sharp, that's because the blade's laid over this way. And whatever side that is, you want to take a couple more strokes. It takes a little bit of feel and a little bit of getting used to, but it'll come there. Okay, so we're done with the stones, and now we just want to talk about finishing off a little bit, so I'm going to bring out my sticks. Here again, I've had these sticks for a lot of years. I really don't even know. I know it's a ceramic stick, but it's a black composition. I'm not exactly sure what type of coarseness is or anything else. My feeling is you want to have something that's very fine. I know they sell these things in medium and coarse and fine. For this process, and when we get to this portion of the stage, you want to have something that's very fine. So what we're going to do is we're just going to say if there's any rollover left on this thing, any burr left, sticks are the thing that are going to help you get rid of that. There's some people that use these for sharpening, and if you get a coarser one and go finer and finer, I can see where that'll work. But the only reason I pull these things out is when I've got that blade basically scary sharp already. This thing is, you cut yourself really easy on this. I'm just going to use it for a finishing touch. I'm going to tilt this thing a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. But for the most part, it's going to depend on your blade, but I usually like to just keep the blade straight up and down. Don't try to kick it, one way or the other and do your angle. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly, and I mean just hardly any pressure at all, run this thing down on there. It's common for people to really, really push down on that. But the point is that we've already got this blade with very little layover the way we've done it. And here again, you can feel, if it feels like, it might be dragging a little bit more on that side, then I might give 2 strokes and 1 until as I'm drawing that thing down, and it just feels like they're giving me equal resistance on each side. That's going to help you do that. Get that layover completely done. I'm not going to get into anything fancy because this is really a beginner's thing, because there are ways that you can bifacially work these blades and maybe put a little bit tougher edge on them. But like I say, we're being really super simple here, and I'm just going to take off that material, okay, and then check my sharpness one more time. And this knife is definitely ready to go through an elk or two. I hunt with my father a lot. He's 78 years old now, and if we both get elks, I'm usually the guy cleaning them, so I like to have my knives ready to go that get me through a couple before they get dull. All right, so that's one way to do that. When you start working on animals in the field, or if you're just using a knife in whatever capacity, sometimes you'll be out there cutting, and because you've got such a fine tip on this thing, if you start running up against a lot of bone or something like that, you may actually lay that blade over a little bit, and you can feel it and say, oh, well, yeah, it is kind of laid over. I've actually got this small ceramic that I just keep in my fanny pack along with my knife, and just allows me to do a little touch up in the field that way. The other thing that I usually pack along with me, in case I really do something nasty or if I just feel like I need to have it, is just a small diamond sharpener. This is a 1200 grit sharpener, and if you need to, even if it's dry, you can just give that thing just a little bit of a touch up and bring life to a blade that is starting to kind of wane on you a little bit. Depending on your knife, sometimes I use knives that the blades aren't quite hard enough, and a softer blade will just kind of give you a little bit more trouble that way. That's it in a nutshell. Like I said, I didn't want to make this too long, but your finishing off process, go to your sticks. If you don't have a set of sticks, you can even buy just a little thing like this. I probably use this more than the actual sticks because it's so handy, and normally I've just it's not on my fanny pack when I'm hunting, it's sitting in my drawer, and I'll make that thing work. These little tiny diamond stones, this is like a 1 inch by 4, it might even be a little longer than 4 inches, 1 inch by 5, in a 1200 grit, or they also make a red one that you can buy. Usually the price isn't too different, and I think this is about an 800 grit. 600 grit actually. But for quick touch-up, those little tiny things are nice for field expediency, and they'll get you through the worst part. But anyway, so what we've got here is a blade that anybody would be proud to stick inside their fanny pack and go hunting with and show off to their friends.